Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the wintercourtpodcast, your premier podcast for competitive content for Legend of the Five Rings, the living card game, coming out later this summer from Fantasy Flight Games. I am Travis McDaniel, and I'm joined here today by my two co-hosts, Alex Gentry.
Hello!
And Dan Henley.
Welcome back, everybody. And welcome back to me again.
Yeah, Dan is now actually going to be probably an official host on the show. Some of our other hosts have had a hard time making these podcasts a reality due to real life stuff, but they may come back at a later date. But for now, Dan, thank you for filling in a spot that was needed, and we're really glad to have you here.
No problem. It's fun talking about the game with you guys and doing card reviews and just getting into L5R.
Besides, we don't have time for people who have real life things. We don't have any other
real life.
I mean, I'm barely passing by, just getting the stuff I want to do for this game out there. It's like all of my free time is spent on L5R stuff, which, I mean, I'm still involved with the game, so it's perfectly okay by me. But yeah, so what have you guys been doing since the last time we recorded? Did you guys actually play any games?
Ha! Ha ha! No, not at all.
Yeah, Gentry, you slacker.
Largely work and being not here.
It's alright, we'll get some games in with you whenever we can. I'm going to print off the Dragon cards, hopefully tomorrow, and we're going to get some actual proxy games in, but I have played some games with them on Tabletop Simulator, and Dragon are a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I've gotten to play with them a little bit, and then watched a number of games, and then I'm actually going to play some today with the Dragon cards. And yeah, Dragon are a lot more fun than I anticipated. It's actually, I was a little surprised and very pleased, actually.
Oh yeah, no. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well the Voltron thing kind of works, actually. If you make some good influence flashes, you can become pretty resilient to what's currently out there in terms of answers to one guy. So it worked out quite well for me in my test games. It didn't feel like it was super vulnerable to one card, and because events cost fate anyway, sometimes, you don't have to worry about them. So, yeah, it's pretty sweet. I've been enjoying the game thoroughly. I think the third clan adds a whole new dynamic to the game, and it's been great. I'm looking forward to whatever's next, which appears to be Crab. And then I think after Crab, my current theory is Phoenix, to give us some good political, to balance out the two military clans we'll have at that point.
They probably go with a poll again, right? They go Phoenix Unicorn poll.
I thought they said
and
they
then...
weren't doing a poll again. I might be wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that from somewhere. I can't really peg where, but I was pretty sure that the rest of it's going to be set.
Is that anyway?
It could be Scorpion after Crab. That would be sweet. Though for story reasons, I really feel like Scorpion's going to be last, because everyone wants to know what the Scorpion are doing right now. Because that's the big thing, is like, are they doing the coup again? Or is it going to be different this time? That's what a lot of people really want to know. At least me, personally. I feel that way, and I think other people do as well.
Right. I think there's a lot of speculation about them being last, simply because it's going to set up whatever the storyline thing is on that Thursday of Gen Con, which is where the storyline prize is.
Well, not only that, but they're very clearly the most popular clan in existence. So it would make a lot of sense to have them last if they're going to do anything, not only story-wise, but just for the sake of everybody wants that clan. Everybody wants to see what they do and how they work.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of things we've done L5R related, while you didn't really play the card game, I know for a fact you played some of the RPG. Because I ran a game.
Know a little lore.
Because I ran a game, yeah. I mean, maybe not lore, but maybe a little bit more on the setting. My game wasn't necessarily super big on the storyline right now.
No, but there was a little bit of lore in there.
Yeah.
I might have some vague L5R background soon-ish.
Yeah. So I know what you're playing. So why don't you tell our listeners how was the game? How'd you like the system? And how about your character? Like, who is he?
I actually really enjoy the system. I've actually been, even just since the one session and the character creation and stuff, I've been toting this system a little bit to a couple of other people that I play D&D with as something that they might want to look into and try out.
Yeah.
But even though I've been toting Unicorn this whole time, I ended up playing a Phoenix Shuganja, and I'm rather happy with the result, actually. It feels very me. Like that's all I can say. Like I created largely myself as a character, and it's really cool to kind of insert into a what is basically Japan, feudal Japan with mystical stuff setting. But it's a really cool system. Like I enjoy the system. I enjoy the lore quite a bit. I actually probably will end up looking up more of the lore myself, but I'll probably be a lot more interested in the lore side of it, which is probably helpful for people here that have been cringing at the fact that you are the only person that knows lore and have nobody to talk to.
I mean,
very
in the first
unfortunate.
episode we had Dan and Justin, who were both pretty big into the old game and the lore a little bit more. But yeah, I do think it'll be nice to have a little bit more of a lore discussion. And like from here and there, I do talk about cards from a lore perspective, like the Death Seekers and stuff like that, and Lion's Pride being all females, and how that fits really thematically with like the theme of the Lion Clan, where you have the clan champion and then he has his pride of female badasses who are like there to protect him. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, and you were playing a water Shuganja, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the Phoenix Shuganja means a lot of things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, it's kind of big. Yeah, it is a water Shuganja.
Water's probably
kind of
one
more
of my
along,
favorites.
kind of more along the like pacifist, like Healy Buffy route.
Yeah, water's probably my personal favorite.
It
Out
looks
of them, fire's probably
kind
the
of
most
fun.
boring to me. I like water
fire,
and air
fire
the
seems
most.
very straightforward. Water seemed kind of fun. Again, I tried to create largely myself as a character, so I went with water.
Yeah.
Due to that.
Yeah, there's some cool spells, and yeah, you definitely played a role towards that, towards the ending of that session. So let's move on to the Dragon Clan card review. So we're gonna do this just like we did before. I suppose I will go first. I guess I'm gonna always get the stronghold. Actually, you know what? Do either of you guys want to take it off first and get the stronghold? Because the dragon stronghold's pretty sweet, and I feel kind of bad always taking the stronghold first.
Why not?
All right,
Doesn't
now.
really matter to me.
Yeah.
So the stronghold for Dragon is Mountains Anvil Castle. Of course, it's +2 as a stronghold. Seems pretty normal by now. It is a castle with the action during a conflict to bow this stronghold. Choose a participating character with one or more attachments on it. And until the end of the conflict, it gets +1 military and political skill. Or if it has 2 or more attachments on it, it gets 2 political and military skill. It also has 10 influence, 11 honor, and 7 fate per turn, which I believe is just going to be the case with every stronghold at this point, unless something strange happens.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we saw a stronghold with different fate numbers. If it was more, then I'd expect a downside. If there was less, then I'd expect a significant buff. But they might just go with 7 across the board, just for the 7 clans, and in the starter box. So.
Yeah, it looks like the starter box is going to be 7 fate, 10 influence, pretty much across the board.
Yep. So it seems like +2, +7, and then 10 influence seems to be pretty standard. What's interesting to me about the stronghold is the 11 honor. Dragon were always kind of, I don't remember them being particularly like a heavy starting honor clan in the old one, but they have the same starting honor in this as Crane, and so that tells me that I think honor, or at least starting honor, the difference between like the lion and the scorpion will be very small. I'm thinking like it might be 9 to 12, like 9 is the floor, 12 is the ceiling, or maybe even 10 to 12. I think they really tried to. I just think like maybe having really low starting honor is not going to be feasible for most clans to even function, just because of the card draw mechanic.
Right. So 9 seems like the best guess for lowest starting honor, because that means you could bid 5 2 turns in a row, and go to 1 honor, assuming your opponent bids 1, because you know it's -4 each time. So that way you wouldn't just kill yourself by bidding 5 both times. But I mean, we have seen a few Scorpion cards that manipulate your honor dial number. But as far as the stronghold goes, I think the initial impressions, some people thought it was a little weak compared to the Crane stronghold and the Lion stronghold. And in practice, this is a really actually powerful effect because it's just so universal and can be used on attack or defense. And +2 to any base stat, because for the most part, you're going to be putting a lot of attachments on guys, is pretty significant. It's like having an extra... or it's like having a free bonsai, half a bonsai each turn, or a free katana.
Yeah, it seems like the game's kind of balanced around a 2-stat swing. The Crane Stronghold is a 2-stat swing, pretty much always, and it's sometimes only a 1-stat swing. This is like a 2-stat swing if you're doing what you want to do in either conflict. So I rate this probably better overall than the Crane Stronghold, and for multiple reasons than just that. The Crane is like bow an opponent's guy, which denies their force, but not their abilities. So it's always going to be you're just kneeling out 2 stats because you can't use it if they have an attachment that gives them extra political or whatever. So you're always kneeling out 2 political with the Crane Stronghold. In this case, you can use that extra strength that you're giving your character for various things such as duels.
I would say that overall this card is not necessarily more powerful, but more flexible than the Crane.
And that's what makes
card.
it more
yeah,
better.
I believe that the Crane Stronghold is very good in certain circumstances, but it is very much more situational than this card. So, yeah, I would agree that this card is maybe better solely because it will be more useful more of the time. But they're both. The Crane Stronghold is still a very powerful effect in the correct circumstances.
Yeah, with the games I've played, this Stronghold did work almost every time. I think it's probably the best Stronghold we've seen so far. Maybe it's going to be different when the game's released as a whole, but I would keep your eye on this. This seems like a very powerful starting Stronghold.
Yeah, definitely. Secondarily, forgive voice cracks and things. My voice is kind of shaky after work yesterday, so it may not be the best.
No, I think you're fine. You're doing all right.
You're fine.
Yep. Dan, why don't you talk about Restoration of Balance?
Yes. All right. So Restoration of Balance is the Dragon's province. It has 3 province strength, and the reaction: after this province is revealed, your opponent chooses and discards cards from his or her hand until that player has 4 or fewer cards in hand. This card also has the fire element attached to it. So because it has the fire element attached, the direct comparison card for this is the neutral Night Raid. And Night Raid, compared to Restoration of Balance, seems a little bit stronger because it will always discard 1 card, whereas Restoration of Balance could discard no cards. And we've run into situations like that in my limited testing and games that I've seen, is that sometimes the Restoration of Balance doesn't really do anything, and then you've lost a province strength for overrunning the Night Raid. That's not to say that I think this card is necessarily weak. I think there are situations where it could be good. It could be good under the province, or under your Stronghold, because your opponent might be going into that last fight with more action, and so discarding down to 4 it could be very, very powerful. But as a standard province, compared directly to Night Raid, I don't think it's as good.
Yeah, the strength of this province is really going to come down to really how many cards your average deck draws. And Lion and Crane don't draw much. So it's kind of weaker than Night Raid against those factions because it'll maybe hit 1 card or sometimes 2. But Night Raid already kind of does that, and Night Raid is 4 province strength. So I'm not super sold on it as of right now. We'll see as more things come unveiled. And it's worth mentioning that there was a leak, and we do know that, at least pretty surely, that the rings matter. And when you're building your deck, you have to have 1 province of each ring. So because Restoration of Balance is fire, you cannot run it and Night Raid in the same deck.
Brad did confirm that in, I think, the Lion Facebook Live video, that all of our guesses about provinces were right. So you can only have, again, like Travis said, 1 of each elemental type.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
the other
that's
thing
cool to
too
know.
is because of the fact that you have access to a more consistent version of this, I don't think there's any reason to run this almost ever. Even though we've already seen 3 of the 7 factions, right? And I don't think this is getting any use against any of them right now. So I don't see any situation where this card ever gets played over Night Raid unless something really crazy happens and Scorpion ends up being a deck that just draws a ton of cards and is the best deck in the game.
It might
In which
be.
case you should be playing it anyway, and you shouldn't be playing this deck regardless. But I highly doubt that this will ever see use over Night Raid as a card if it's already not seeing use in what we have, unless something very strange happens. Perhaps in future sets, but out of core, I don't think there's any reason to play this card ever.
I do think that what we have is probably the matchup where this card does the least work. So it could do quite a bit of work in other matchups. We just don't know simply how flexible those clients are with their honor and card draw. And we know Phoenix draws a lot of cards, or at least it seems to be a theme of theirs with their library. So between like library and then like we now know about a neutral holding that lets you sacrifice it to draw a card, I could see certain factions actually having quite a bit of conflict draw.
I mean, this is true, but that means that in at least half of your matchups, this card is nigh useless. Whereas Night Raid will always be useful against everything, no matter what.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of their opponent getting to choose to discard, but then again, random discard is kind of annoying from a competitive standpoint because then it comes down to what you pulled. So I guess it's probably better overall, but while making the card weaker.
So I just think that on average, Night Raid is just going to perform better because it's easier to play around Restoration of Balance, because if you're playing against Dragon, you can just be like, I'll go into every fight with 4 cards.
That's fair.
And whereas with Night Raid, you can't. You're as long as you're sending one guy in, you're going to lose a card.
Yep. That's fair. I think that's really all there is to say right now. 3 Province Strength really hurts us. If it was 4, I'd like it more. But if it's 3 for an effect that sometimes does nothing, ooh, that's not great. Comparing it to like Art of War, which always draws you 3 cards when it's broken.
Or they don't break it.
Yeah, or they don't break it, which is fine too. Yeah, not super sold on it. So I guess now it's my card. I get the first dragon 1-cost character, which is Doomed Shuganja. So this is a 1-cost character with 3 military, 3 political, 1 glory. It is the first limited card we have seen in the game, and I think the only one. Limited being you cannot play more than 1 limited card per player per turn. So if you basically right now, since this is the only limited card, it means you can't play 2 Doom Shuganja in 1 turn. Additionally, you cannot place Fate on this character when it is played from one of your provinces. So this is a very obviously very grossly overstated 1-cost character, balanced by the caveat that you cannot place Fate on it when you buy it from your provinces. You can still place Fate on it using other effects that we can get to later, if those effects happen to work out for you. Unfortunately, it's not a Bushi, so you can't use for Greater Glory. But spoilers, the Dragon have another card that lets you sometimes put Fate on characters.
I mean, yeah, the card just seems really, really solid, though, overall. Like, the fact that it is limited is basically nothing. The fact you can't put Fate on it is a little sad, but it balances out the fact that it is still always 3/3 for 1. And I think, for the most part, this is just going to be a province breaker. This is something that you're just going to send in when you like really need the boost in strength, and you can just kind of leave it up there as a threat forever in your provinces if you really want to.
Yeah,
so you either need it or your opponent has to play around it, one of the two.
It's just a good 1-drop. Even on, if you're attacking on T1, then you can just, pop this guy out, and you're going to have 3 in whatever challenge you decide to go for right off the bat, which is always strong. The 0 Fate condition makes it susceptible, obviously, to the water ring if you're being attacked, which means you're going to have to defend a water attack with it if you're going second. But overall, I mean, you can't really be too upset with a 3/3 for 1. It's also got 1 glory, so you could even bump it to a 4 if some situation were to play out like that.
It's also Shuganja, and Shuganja allows you to play currently Cloud the Mind as well as other spells. It's also kind of funny that the Water Ring defeats the Fire Shuganja. It's just kind of
thematic.
It's cool. Unintentional theme, or maybe very intentional theme. We can't know for sure. So this is a 3 of in every deck. It's like a really good 1-drop. And the only downside to this card, I think, is that it's kind of mindless. If you see it, you pay 1 Fate, you get it. Hooray! That's all there is to it. It's a great 1-drop.
So I don't know about that though. Like I said, I actually think there is some merit to just leaving it in your provinces and forcing your opponent to play around it. Especially because this is, again, I think this is something that you're going to use to just break a province or mount a really big defense if you absolutely need to.
I think the strength of this card is it's just cheap stats. I would much rather cycle through my province deck to get the really impactful characters, or my Dynasty deck to get the really impactful characters that do things often and can stick around more than one turn. So unless I have to save that fate for something else, I don't see much better value than paying 1 fate and getting 3 in each stat to swing around with on the board.
Yeah, being able to cycle through your dynasty deck is just generally good if you want to see more of those cards on an average, because if a game is around 4 to 5 turns, that means you're seeing somewhere between 16 and 20 cards, maybe a little bit more if things get discarded. So any card that you can physically cycle through and don't have to discard is going to be good, and it just gives you stats.
Yep, let's move on. Ginger, you have the other 1-drop. That's not really a 1-drop for reasons we're going to explain.
Yeah, another 1-drop that is definitely not a 1-drop. Togashi Initiate is a 1 fate, 1/1 with 2 glory. He has the monk and tattooed traits, and the action, while this character is attacking, spend 1 fate to an unclaimed ring and honor this character. He's really, really freaking good. You get the free honor and get a 3/3 every time, or anytime you attack. And he's almost immune to dishonor, because you just get to re-honor him anytime he gets dishonored, as long as you can attack with him. So you get a free honor on him once per turn. You can spend fate to any unclaimed ring, so you can either push your opponent into using a certain ring, or towards using a certain ring that isn't very good for them, or you can just dump fate onto one ring that you're going to take later for a bunch of fate, because your opponent doesn't want that one and needs something else.
Is it free, though?
And he's definitely a character that you keep on the board for quite a while, if you can.
I'm not super sure either way. I'm not sure I agree with most of that, really.
Really?
It's not a free honor, for example, because you have to put a fate on a ring. It's only useful when attacking, meaning that your opponent can immediately counterclaim the ring unless you are going second and it is the last conflict of the turn, or you have already bowed out all of your opponent's characters. This is a solid card, don't get me wrong. I'm not super sold that it's amazing. Just because it's kind of like giving a fate to your opponent. But you do control where that fate goes.
Well, you are kind of giving a fate to your opponent, but like, there's a lot of decks that are very clearly favor certain rings, or situations that very clearly favor certain rings. So you can very easily just go, well, if you'd like the fire ring, I'll go ahead and put a fate on the like earth ring or something. And now they have a decision to make. They either have to take the earth ring for the extra fate that you put on it and give up the effect of the fire ring that they would be getting, or they take the fire ring and the fate is still sitting there for you next turn, or during your next attack, depending on when you use this card.
So the thing here is, like, there's almost never a situation where a ring is not useful, and almost every ring becomes worth it if you're getting a fate for free with it. So I'm not super sold just because of that. But then again, paying 1 fate for 2 stats on each category, very good, very flexible. Like Dragon as a whole, their Stronghold's very flexible, the last card's very flexible, this card's very flexible. But sometimes, like, if you do get a fate to your opponent, not as great.
I mean, it could definitely make a difference, and there are points in time where the effect of this card isn't as good. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, you can rely on this card as technically a 2 fate 3/3.
Yep.
If you want to look at it that way. But like, because of the way that rings work, it very much allows you to kind of manipulate which rings your opponent uses during a turn, which can in and of itself be pretty strong.
So I think this guy is just okay. You like having 1-drop guys that can buff themselves. So, or cheap guys that can buff themselves, and honor isn't negligible either, because if he leaves play, you're going to gain an honor, which could end up being more cards that you draw, which is good. He is a monk, which is relevant for a few other cards that we'll see later. And however, because it's an only on attack thing, it does make him susceptible to cards like Doji Challenger. So, like, if Crane is going first, they just buy the Doji Challenger, attack with it, and then pull your Initiate in. And then all of a sudden you've wasted a fate, and you're not going to be able to get any value out of that guy, maybe, which is unfortunate. Putting the fate on a ring is, I'm more mixed on it. I don't know if it's necessarily bad for you or good for you, because like Travis was saying, none of the rings are necessarily bad. They're more situational. But then sometimes if a ring has 2 fate on it, it becomes just better to take that ring to get the 2 fate. Because it either is going to allow you to play certain cards from your hand for that conflict, or help set you up for a future turn. So giving up a fate could be bad. You could also, I guess, potentially get that fate back. But in general, I just think this card's okay.
There's equally something to be said for having, being that we'll go into more cards later. There are several cards in Dragon that put Fate on rings, or at least two, rather, that put Fate on rings. And there's something to be said, too, for the fact that you could easily have two of them out at the same time and use both of them on different rings to ensure that they balance each other out as well.
Yeah, that's true. Also,
it's not as common a situation, but it will happen.
We'll also see some cards, again, spoilers, that maybe your opponent taking the specific rings or taking Fate off of rings is actually good for you. So it is a theme of Dragon. It kind of works in tandem with it. I just think that in a vacuum, this card is okay. It's slightly better with the certain combinations you can do with other Dragon cards. It's a very solid one-drop. You'll definitely run probably 3 of it for a while. But I just don't think it's like... It's not like Brash Samurai, where I think it's like almost unconditionally really good. There's like very few situations where Brash Samurai is not good. There are some situations where I feel like I really don't want to pay the Fate to a ring to honor this guy, unless I really have to.
Or like, I think another character or card that you would never consider not buying is a Kodo Gunso. It's the same type of idea. It just helps those clans do what they want to do. And sometimes Togashi Initiate's going to be useful, and then other times it's going to be like, I think I need to spend that one Fate somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And Dragon are kind of expensive overall, so sometimes that one Fate, especially giving it to your opponent, seems like a bit too steep of a cost. But again, they have things that work with it, and it's a very solid card.
He's got an awesome tattoo, and his art is great. So
I fucking love his art.
A+ there.
He's kind of kung fu all over somebody. So let's move on. Dan, you get a cool card.
Yes, this card is great. So this is a Gasha Swordsmith. It's a 2-cost character, 1 military, 2 political skill, 1 glory, the Shuganja and fire traits, and the action: search the top 5 cards of your conflict deck for an attachment, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Shuffle, and that presumably that means shuffle your deck, but templating. So this card is really, really good, especially in, like, obviously you can only play it in Dragon, but because Dragon are an attachment-based faction, this is just pure card draw, and additionally it's filter, so you can find the exact attachment that you're looking for. His stats are even good too. A 1/2 for 2 isn't horrible, especially considering you're getting that draw effect off of him. This is actually an effect we've seen in a lot of other FFG games. It's pretty standard for them, so I'm glad that they brought it back into this game.
Yep, this is a grossly good card. It's tutor, and it's like Brad Andre's tutor is what I'll call it. Because Brad Andrews doesn't do like search your deck for a card. It's always like search the top X cards of your deck for a card, which I like a lot because it means like tutors don't get like super busted. You always get a sure combo going, but it still means that tutors almost always get you something. And free card draw is great, especially when you can kind of control what you're drawing. The nice thing about this card is it's repeatable. It's an action, so you can do it once a turn. If he sticks around for multiple turns, you get multiple cards. Real good.
Yeah, it definitely seems very, very strong. Especially in L5R specifically, where card draw and searching specifically is very, very much in lacking. Any amount of card draw or search is pretty much welcome, and this card is really good for that. I mean, obviously the stats aren't great, but they're reasonable, and the effect is fantastic, especially considering Dragon, where you're going to be playing a lot of attachments, which we'll be getting into later, of course.
Yep.
And he's functional.
You want to see absolutely all of them.
Yeah, he's functional as a 2/1, so like you can put him into conflicts, like in a political conflict, and be fine, which is cool. He could have very easily have been a 1/1 or a 0/1 or something like that, and then you would have just been playing him for the action effect, which would have been a little bit disappointing. But because he even has stats, like, blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a very good card. This very much could have been like, and it even could have been like a 2 Fate, some kind of card that just stays on the field as a conflict card and doesn't even have stats, and you still would have played it.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I think his stats are just slightly below what I would think an average 2-drop will be, which is 2/2, 1 or 2 glory. So it's fine. For that action, totally worth it. Yep. If you're running attachments, run him. I'll go on to the next card. Miyamoto Prodigy, also kind of fitting in with the attachment theme. Miyamoto Prodigy is a 2-cost 2/2 with 1 glory, the Bushi and Duelist traits, and the text that is always on: while this character is attacking alone, your opponent cannot declare more than 1 defender. So this works really well if your Miyamoto Prodigy becomes very good at whatever conflict she's in, because then whatever your opponent sends to defend can only defend alone. That said, your opponent can still ambush in characters from their conflict deck to defend, in addition to that. But in general, this card works really great, especially if you are like with a Crane ally and you're splashing Admit Defeat. You can just immediately bow whoever she's up against. And if she's like attacking military, there's a ton of military pumps to get her up to break a province on her own. And since you're a dragon, you have this attachment theme. This attachment theme means that she can become a real scary thing. I think honestly the downside of this card is it's 2 cost, and that means it's very vulnerable to a lot of 2 cost shenanigans, like blackmail or assassinate. But outside of that, it's a very solid 2 cost character.
I think that kind of had to be done to balance it out, to be fair, because if you didn't have some outs to this card that were just straight, getting rid of it, I actually think this card could be completely... You could very easily make this card completely unstoppable and just make it win every single conflict it goes into.
Yep. I don't know about unstoppable, but certainly very good. What are your thoughts, Dan?
It would be
strong,
basically unstoppable. Like if you built a deck, for the sake of building up 1 or 2 characters, like this character effectively just becomes invincible in any conflict that it goes into. And on top of that, it's not even unique, so you can have more of these. You can have multiple of these out at a time.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about like it being unstoppable. It's a very solid effect and very strong, but like it's not like on the level of a clan champion. It's just a very good 2-drop with a very good, very useful ability. And Dragon do kind of want low character counts anyway, so forcing your opponent to only defend with 1 kind of forces them to play into your game a little more.
Yeah, so as a 2-drop, I think it's very solid. The ability is very good. There are ways you have to play around it whenever you're playing against it, so it's kind of frustrating, but I can totally see if you Voltron it out of control that it could get difficult, but in general I just think it's solid. One of the things that it does have that it's really relevant because attachments is Bushi. So if Dragon decides to splash Lion cards, you can put like a Sashimono on this, and then all of a sudden it's going into military conflicts by itself, and it's going to come out without bowing, and then you could throw it back into the political conflict, and they're going to have to defend with a single character again. So there's some slight control built into the card, which is cool. We did see a card fan where this had 3 military skill, and I think at 3 military skill, this card would have been like insane, which is weird to say because it's just +1. But at 2/2, it seems balanced.
Yep. And I think the 2/2 is the more updated one, just because it was in the more recent fan, and it just seems to be more balanced overall. It could very well be a 3/2 in the final product, in which case this card is one of the better 2-drops out there that we've seen. So yeah, let's keep it going. Let's go into the next one.
So I have Knight and Adept,
Niten.
I believe. Niten? Wow.
Niten.
Pronunciation.
Ni as in the Japanese word for 2, ten the word for heaven, 2 heaven style.
Got you.
Well, there we
Gotcha.
go.
Some lore for people.
Today I learned.
Yep.
Yes. Alright, so this is a 2 fate, 2 military strength, 1 political skill character with 1 glory. He has the Bushi trait. And the action, while this character is participating in a conflict, bow a friendly attachment on it. Choose a participating character without attachments and bow that character. It seems reasonably strong. It's not particularly amazing, as far as I can tell, but the fact that you can bow anything that doesn't have an attachment could easily swing a conflict. You do, of course, have to have an attachment on it, but you're dragon and you're going to have a billion attachments anyway. It's not too hard to throw something light on him, just for the effect, if you really need to. I'm not sure if you guys have had any practice playing this card a lot. I mean, I'm assuming you've played it some, but I'm not sure if this is a 3 of personally.
This card is freaking annoying.
So, okay. What you said about your meta Prodigy, I say about this card. This card is nuts. It's a bonkers card. It's a very niche situational bow. Or very unniche, I should say. Not a lot of decks have that many attachments. They're gonna have like the 6 neutrals, and then they might have like a couple of clan attachments. But like ultimately, like attachments are not gonna be all that common. And this card alone is just, his action is almost always going to be a force swing in your favor, and usually a significant one, unless your opponent plays one attachment on all their guys. And that's very difficult to do for a lot of the decks we've seen so far. And so
additionally,
freaking obnoxious and really good.
Yes, the card is really annoying to play against and just always does something beneficial for you. It's also important to note that attachments in this game still provide their skill bonuses, or whatever bonuses they're providing, even if they're bowed. So like, you put a katana on this guy and he goes to 4-1, and then if you bow it, you're going to bow out their guy, and you're not losing any force, and they're just straight losing force. It's crazy. He can bow clan champions easily if you don't play around his ability. It's just, and he's flexible. He's not nil political skill, so if you give him an Ornate Fan, which is a card we've seen that gives +2 political skill, then he can actually go into political conflicts fairly effectively. And yeah, this card is just kind of nuts. Oh, the restricted rule also makes him a little bit better, because you can, if you put a new restricted attachment on him, then the old one, you can pick one to go away. So you could put just like a new, you can change him up to whatever you need him to be, kind of turn over turn. It's crazy. This card is really annoying to play against.
Yeah. Yep. You're gonna have a lot of attachments, and so like his ability is basically always on. So this is like a 2-cost character that can bow characters without attachments pretty much always. It's just phenomenally annoying and very, very good. I think this card is going to be one of Dragon's staples for a while.
There's just so many cheap attachments you can put on him to turn him on.
There's a ton of 0-cost ones. You got the 6 neutral 0-cost ones. You got the ancestral ones that go back to your hand when they leave play, so you basically always have them once you draw one. Unless they get earth ringed out of your hand, or otherwise discarded. There's Way of the Dragon, which is especially bonkers with this guy, because then you can bow 2 characters. And you have like any other splash attachments you might be having, such as Honored Blades or Guidance of the Ancestors, that also don't care if they're bowed. I think the only attachment that cares if it's bowed right now is Tetsubo, but then you're just not using Tetsubo's ability. You still get the +3 strength.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic 2-drop, and yeah, need to add up to play it. I think this is you, Dan.
Yes, so I get the last 2-drop. This is a Seeker of Enlightenment. Is a 2-cost character. It has 1 military skill and 1 political skill. 0 glory. Monk and tattooed traits. This character gets +1 mil and +1 political for each fate on each unclaimed ring. So I think this was one of the first Dragon cards spoiled, and when we saw it, we're like, how good is this actually going to be? And the answer is somewhat. So there's definitely situations where this thing turns into some type of 5/5, and the game, and you just pop this out for 2 and you just have stats, which is crazy. But then there are also points in the game where this is like going to be, obviously this is a 1/1 on turn 1, so you don't really want to buy it then. So it's kind of a turn 2, turn 3 character. Even then, your opponent can play around how strong this character is, which is annoying, because the fate gets claimed as soon as the ring is declared. So they can instantly like debuff it just by picking a ring. But I mean, I think one of the games I watched, there were 2 of these that were at 5/5 for 2 fate apiece. So you're getting 10 stats for 4 fate is insane value.
Yeah. I think this card has timing. It's like literally it. It's just about when this card shows up. If it shows up at the right time, it's an insanely good 2-drop. If it shows up at the wrong time, you'd much rather see literally anything else. Paying 2 for a 2/2/0 is not great, so you need to have 2 rings with fate on them, and you need to, if you're going first, you can't take the fate rings with fate on them because it makes it weaker. And if you're going second, then your opponent's going to obviously take a ring with fate on it, and so that makes it weaker. So like it's a really tricky card. What promotes this card are all the various ways you have to put fate on rings, and also if you can somehow get yourself to a situation where your opponent is declaring as many conflicts, so you put your opponent in a situation, or yourself are in a situation where you're spending most of your characters on 1 or 2 conflicts, and like big conflicts rather than doing the 4, then you can get multiple fate on multiple rings, and that can add up over a turn. And that's kind of what happened where I got 2/5/5 of these out. I think there was 1 big conflict the turn before, and every other ring got a fate. Or no, 3 of the rings had a fate on them, and then I had a Togashi Initiate, which put a fate on a ring, and that made her a 5/5. So yeah, situationally very good, but on average, I think the average case is it's an okay card.
I think that's pretty much what we guessed it was going to be as soon as we saw it to begin with. Was that it's going to be pretty consistently. I think you can make it like a 3/3 if you want to, but like I think that's basically what you should expect from this card is that it's going to be a 3/3 most of the time for 2, like a 2/2 to a 3/3 most of the time, unless you have a setup for it.
I think most of the time it's going to be a 2/2. It's going to be a 3/3 if you have it with another card that spends fate to rings.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if you have a little bit of it, yeah, as I say, you have a decent amount of time to it. So I think you can like pretty consistently. I think it's basically a 50-50 between whether it's going to be a 2/2 or a 3/3, unless you are specifically looking to buff it or something crazy happens. But that still makes it decent most of the time. Still makes it like an okay card in a lot of situations. As a 2/2, it's not great. As a 3/3, it's pretty good.
Yep.
There's no reason not to use it, but it's not phenomenal unless you go crazy.
It's an oddly swingy card, because, like I said, it could just be huge, but it could also be nothing. So it's just in this weird spot. The monk trait is somewhat relevant for cards we'll see later, but other than that, yeah, I feel mixed about the card.
Yeah. Definitely a little mixed here. But again, if Dragon Investment Bank works out, then if that gets more support in the future, this card could definitely be a staple of that deck. Dragon Investment Bank being sort of what I'm calling the Dragon style, where you are placing a ton of fate on rings constantly, and the expectation that you'll be able to get them back later. Sort of like you invest a fate to get an immediate benefit, and then you're able to get that benefit back later through your opponent claiming the fate on the ring, and you triggering an effect because of that, or because you did it in such a way that your opponent doesn't want to get that ring, they have a clearly better ring, and you're just able to get the fate back later. So you literally just got a free, very good benefit. But we'll see how well that plays out in the future. I think out of the core box with what we've seen of Dragon so far, it's a merely okay card. If a better 2-drop comes along, I wouldn't hesitate to remove this for it. So I'll go on to say and show one of those cards that I was talking about that works really well with Dragon Investment Bank. Enlightened Warrior. It is a 3-cost, 2 military, 2 political character with 1 glory, the Bushi trait, and reaction. After an opponent selects a ring with fate on it, place 1 fate on this character. Well, hey, here we go. Investment Bank. You're getting return no matter what your opponent does now. And this guy can kind of become Eternal Warrior in some games, I think. And, you know, it makes opponent really think about whether or not they're going to take that fate after all. But then again, if they don't take it, then you can probably take it. So I think it's just more or less just a case of your opponent's going to feel like they have to take the fate, and you're just going to get fate on this guy. And with attachments, this guy can be real bonkers. Otherwise, his stats are not great.
Have you seen this card played yet?
I have not. I've been trying. I've been trying every game. Like I think there's only 2 cards I haven't seen play, and it's that and then a 4-drop. This and a 4-drop we're gonna get to later.
I just think the situation, like, typically when this guy will show up in the province, right? You're like, do I want to pay 3 fate for this guy? Because he's a 2/2.
Yeah.
And
it's like, do I put no fate on him to start?
Yeah.
Because then like your opponent goes like, all right, I just won't claim any rings with fate this turn. And then you just paid 3 for a 2/2 for a turn. That feels bad. So maybe you play 1 fate on him as a sort of hedge against that. But yeah, he seems decidedly solid. I just haven't seen him do a lot of work yet, just because I just don't think I've seen him ever flipped and played.
Right.
It's a really
like a
weird
weird situation.
Yeah, it's a weird card to evaluate because it's 100% dependent on the mind game between you and your opponent, right? Like, you get this card on the board, and all of a sudden your opponent's like, well, I can take the ring with Fate on it anyway and just let him keep it 2/2. It's just a 2/2. It's not too big a deal, and I get the effect I want and the Fate. Or I can pick a ring that I don't particularly want and that doesn't have Fate on it, but then and kill this guy off, but then I'm giving up an effect, and like it just depends on how your opponent evaluates things as well. And it's dependent on board state at the time. I don't know. It's really difficult to evaluate this card because it's dependent on so many different things during a game. You know, who your opponent is, how they think, how they play, what the board state is. It's very, I don't know, it's a very strange card, and I'm not sure whether it's good or not. It seems okay, but I can't say that for sure.
If it was 2 cost, then you're like, okay, yeah, totally play this card because
sure.
you might get value out of it. But at 3, it's like, it's a weird question because 3 Fate on a turn is a lot, especially like on T1 because you're only going to have 7 Fate. So this is almost a half of your investment, and it's not going to do anything on T1, so you're not going to play it then. So it means you have to play it on turns 2+. And then your opponent could play around it, but also could just like not care because again, it's a 2-stat character without any other relevant ability. But like I said, I haven't played it yet. I haven't seen it played, so it is all just speculative. But maybe there's just better 3 Fate investments there in Dragon.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is I think this is really a 4 Fate investment too. Because I think if my opponent plays this with no Fate, I'm pretty okay with just not taking ring Fate this turn, unless there's like a ring with 3 Fate on it, in which case, fine, you got me. But I'll take the 3 Fate to give you a Fate on this guy. So this guy kind of hints on like you have to have your opponent taking the Fate rings with Fate on it, which is generally something they want to do. But they can probably skip out on it for 1 turn, so I think you want to put 1 Fate on this guy, so he sticks around for 2 turns to sort of kind of become that sort of engine that he wants to be. And then you also have to give him attachments that make him scary and makes it so he's worth keeping around. But then again, I suppose like if you get like a free Fate on a 2/2, he can kind of become just like an eternal 2/2. So he's kind of like an obstinate recruit with 2 political and 1 glory without the downside, but he costs 3 instead of 0. I don't know. It's a really tough card to evaluate having not seen it played. I just think he's probably solidly okay. He's got cool flavor text and cool art, though. Dig both of those.
The poem is awesome.
This is true. The whole card's flavor is phenomenal.
Yeah, and for those listening, it is in heart, air, in spirit, earth, in sword, fire, in body, water, and in mind, void. So cool. It's definitely like the that sort of like Shinsei. Honestly, because he's only using 1 sword, I'm actually kind of thinking he might be a Taoist, which is a subsect of the Miramoto school that tries to sort of reach enlightenment through Bushido as a samurai. So they're like enlightenment Bushi. It's kind of cool. So it's pretty sweet to see that sort of thing going on.
A+ for flavor. Again.
A+ for flavor.
Seems to be a theme with this game, to be fair.
Yep.
Yeah, they really nailed it. They did it out the park on a lot of this stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I'm loving the flavor. All right, Gentry, why don't you tell us about Kitsuki Investigator?
We do have Kitsuki Investigator. Our second 3-drop, but let's be honest, that card isn't a 3-drop. So 3 Fate, 1 military, 3 political skill character with 2 glory and the courtier trait. With the action, while this character is participating in a political conflict, spend 1 Fate to an unclaimed ring and look at your opponent's hand. Choose one of those cards and discard it. You get to draw a decent amount. Yes, maximum per conflict. You're correct. This is an interesting card. Stat-wise, it's not great, but generally speaking, being able to choose a card out of your opponent's hand, a specific card out of your opponent's hand, has always been a very, very strong effect in any card game. To the point where I recall the only card that ever did that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Was banned not more than 6 months after it came out. forever and has never come back, because you could just pick out the one card that your opponent actually needed for their entire deck to function and just make it not exist. And it was very sad. I don't think that's as big a deal in this game specifically because of the way that the Dynasty deck works. Your characters obviously can't be discarded, but there are a lot of very good conflict cards that can turn games around themselves, or even just single conflicts. So I think it's pretty strong. Again, I haven't gotten to play with Dragon, unfortunately, so I can't tell 100% how strong it actually is, but it seems like a reasonably good card, given that most of the decks that we've seen so far don't draw a lot of cards. But that may be slightly less true if decks in the future don't or end up drawing significantly more cards, because at that point you may just have 2 copies of everything you need, or have several outs to pretty much any situation and just sitting in your hand, and it may not be as good.
So I agree with most of that. Pulling cards out of the conflict hand is strong. So strong, in fact, that the max 1 per conflict limit is actually universal across having multiple Kitsuki Investigators. So if you had 2 in the same political conflict, you can only trigger that ability once, and this ability isn't modified by having Way of the Dragon on it, which we'll see later. So they felt like being able to pull conflict cards out of your opponent's hand more than once was way too strong. So that's why it's limited to 1. Still at 1, that's very, very relevant. Again, also, this is the only native courtier in Dragon, and courtier is a really important trait because it allows you to play For Shame, which is a very strong conflict card. So this is actually one of their downsides, is that because this is the only guy that can play For Shame, you're going to have to maybe import courtiers if you want to play that. But obviously with the number of attachments they have, sometimes it might not matter. His stats, I think, are the same as the Kitsu Spirit Caller at 1-3. So Honored, he goes to 3-5, which is strong, but he's not really a 3-cost character either. He's sort of a 4 because you want to trigger his effect. You could technically trigger his effect twice in a turn if he was in both political conflicts, but that effect isn't free. You still have to claim a fate. This is another card I haven't fully seen in play. I think I saw someone play it but never trigger it. They just kind of bought it for the political. So I think it's a good effect. I think we'll probably see more play as there are going to be clans that play more out of the conflict deck or play more towards the conflict deck, like Scorpion and maybe Phoenix. They just want to have more of those cards. So being able to pull out a card like Blackmail or Assassinate or something like that during a conflict is going to be strong, I think.
Yeah, so I think this card is great in the limited experience I've had with it. The 1-3 stats are not amazing. Spirit Caller, like you mentioned, kind of makes up for it because the Spirit Caller just sends someone else in most of the time and doesn't have to participate to do anything good. But I think the real good thing about this card is it's the only placing Fate on Ring effect that you can do on defense that we've seen so far. And because of that, that makes it very good. So you can defend a political conflict with your Kitsuki Investigator, snipe a card first action, and place it on a ring that's not being used in this conflict. And then you can counterattack the very next attack and take that fate back. And so in that sense, it becomes a very much free snipe a single card. And that's very good. Because you can, like, if you're really worried about a Voice of Honor or something like that, a Voice of Honor, a Bonsai, a Way of the Crane. There's so many things. Your opponent basically has to play those before going in against the Kensuke Investigator, just to make sure that you don't discard it. So you get to look at your opponent's hand and you say, that's the best card in your hand. It's not in there anymore. That's extraordinarily strong, so much so that even with Way of the Dragon, you have to send him into 2 conflicts somehow, which can be difficult. But yeah, I really dig this 3-drop. 2 glory, too. A+.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think there's much else to say. Like, discarding cards from hand has always been strong in any card game. When you get to choose, when you get to not only get all of the information on your opponent's hand, but also pick anything you want and get rid of it, like, that just gives you so much advantage.
Yep. I agree. This is a very solid card. Speaking of solid cards, tell us about Miyamoto Raisugu, Dan.
Yes. So Mirumoto Raitsugu is a unique 3-cost character with 3 military skill and 2 political skill, the Bushi and Duelist traits, and 1 glory, with the action. While this character is participating in a conflict, choose a participating character controlled by your opponent. Challenge that character to a military duel. If the loser of the duel has no fate on it, discard it. Otherwise, remove 1 fate from it. This is the card Deathseeker wishes it was, in a way. This card is really strong. Being able to bully duel because you get to pick the opponent is super, super relevant. He can do it in any type of conflict, so he can do it in a political conflict as well. He has 2 political skill, and then remember your dragons, you're going to have a lot of political attachments that you could put on him, so he can just kill courtiers or help remove fate. It's just an insanely good ability. And at 1 glory, that means that if he gets dishonored, it doesn't really hurt him that much either. Obviously, the converse of that is if he's honored, it doesn't necessarily help him that much. But yeah, being able to remove fate from characters is strong, and then being able to discard non-fated characters is more strong. Or stronger, I guess is the term.
Yeah.
English is hard.
I can't help but compare this guy to Kazin of the Grain, because they have the same cost and the same base stat line. Kazin just has 1 extra glory. Where Kazin's duel, I feel like I want to trigger it in order to force my opponent to give me honor to not have it go off. I think this guy, you always want the differential, and you're going to use his duel purely when he's got a ton of stats. And this guy is probably the best character the Dragon have that you give a good chunk of military stats to, and then you use your stronghold to give him +2 more, and then, like, let's say he's got a katana and a dice show, an ancestral dice show. That makes him 7 base, and he has 2 attachments. You give him 2 more with your stronghold for free. He becomes a 9 military guy that is just sniping people left and right. Like, if they've got no fate, they die. If they do have a fate, they're going to get removed at the end of the turn because you're removing their fate. It's just an insane ability. And again, bully dueling is what he wants to do. He wants to have an immense number of stats over his target, and then he's just going to say, I win the duel automatically. There's nothing you can do about it. He's just going to remove a fate every time. Whereas I think Kazin is a little bit more of a niche card. You want Kazin to... Kazin can win the duel, but because the Crane kind of have an honor victory anyway, I found the best use of Kazin is to have him decently statted, have him higher statted than most of the guys your opponent has, and they'll pick their best guy, and then you want to make it so that they have to give you honor in order to not have everyone else go home. And then even if they do win the duel, you gain some honor. Kazin goes home, you can use him in a later conflict. So, very different cards, even though they seem very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys went over pretty much everything. It seems like a very solid card. You get to just take people out of the game pretty easily. It's like a void. It's like a free void ring, man. Every turn, really, when you think about it. In a way.
Yep.
Should you set it up correct? And it's very easy to set this up, especially with the way the dragon works, to have, 6-7+ military by turn 1, even if you really want it.
Yep. And this is, again, just one of those characters that makes your stronghold giving stats to a character relevant. Very relevant. So I rate this guy up there with Doji Challenger and Lion's Pride Brawler in terms of the very solid 3-drops. And hopefully every faction gets like a 3-drop that's on this level. Yeah, so let's move on. First 4-drop card for me. This is a card I also haven't seen play. Haven't been able to just flip it and play it. This is Ascetic Visionary, not Aesthetic Visionary, as some people might be prone to mispronouncing. Those are 2 very different things. So Ascetic Visionary is a 4-cost, 3 military, 4 political character with 1 glory, which makes sense because he is a monk, and he is also tattooed. He cannot carry any attachments except for monk attachments or tattoo attachments. And as an action, while this character is attacking, spend 1 fate to an unclaimed ring, choose a monk character or character with a monk attachment, and ready that character. So I haven't seen this guy in play yet, but his ability seems interesting to me. So I think the real strength in this ability is that if you have unspent fate, your opponent basically can't mess with him when he's attacking. Because if they bow him with For Shame or any other bow effect, you can just spend a fate to an unclaimed ring and ready him again. If you want to get any real value out of this guy, he has this weird thing where like you have to have like already defended a conflict, and then you're using him in your first attack, and then you're readying guys that you use to defend, who have monk attachments, and that seems a little weird, and like certainly very powerful if it aligns, but definitely not something I think you're going to do every time. So like he's definitely kind of dual folds dragon into being able to defend conflicts, and then ready, and then attack, or attack, and then ready again for a defense. So I think this guy almost always goes into your first attack every turn, and his ability won't really work if you're going first as much. He's really good after you've already defended a conflict. Yeah.
I mean, secondarily too, he's pretty easy to combo with things like the goodness, I've forgotten names already.
Give
me a moment.
Yeah. Seeker of Enlightenment,
and things like that. To just ready them. I mean, and we'll get into the fact that there are monk attachments that are pretty easy to put on things later. But he can also very easily be used to ready up pretty much anything that you've buffed. The only problem I think I have with this card is that it is 4 cost. Stats aren't bad for 4 cost, but it's more on the expensive side. You want him around for at least a couple of turns, so it's probably more like 5 or 6 cost when you actually look at it. But
he does seem to work well with Seeker of Enlightenment on the surface, so the problem is, like, again, the Seeker of Enlightenment has to already be bowed when he is attacking. So she has to be bowed while attacking with him, like your opponent bowed her with an effect, in which case you can ready her again with this ability, or she has to have already been bowed from a prior conflict, and now you are attacking with Ascetic Visionary. It's because this guy has to be attacking that it's very clunky to use.
It's really weird. It's
kind of like a water ring. He's kind of like a weird water ring, in a sense, and his effect is kind of just a half water ring. Sometimes. And it's because the water ring can be clunky if you're going first and you have no bowed characters already. This is kind of the same boat. But I think like if you're a good player and you play around with this guy, and I think you can get some real value out of this. And his stats are very solid for a 4-cost character. 3 and 4, very balanced. Again, I don't think there's been a single dragon character that had been completely one-sided. They've been relatively balanced across the board. This is just more in that favor.
Secondarily, he technically works with Sugu if you attach a monk to him.
Yeah, he does.
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting. But
Raisugu can't use it.
I don't know how useful. Yeah, I mean it's kind of useful though, because if you're buffing them up anyway, having them around for a second conflict can be very good.
Although worth noting, no attachments except for monk or tattoo really hurts this card. Dragon have a lot of attachments, and they only have 2 of them that are monks. And everything else this guy can't equip because we don't have any tattoo attachments right now. So
equally
that makes me a
it
little
means
sad.
that you equally though it means he can't be pacified.
Yeah, he can't be pacified. He can't be cloud the minded. His mind is very clear, and he is definitely not a pacifist.
Yeah, so I mean there is that. Like it also means that your opponent can't throw attachments, and I'm almost positive that Scorpion's going to have at least 1 or 2 attachments too. That'll mess with stuff. So you'll be immune to that as well when that comes out.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's also that. It seems like an interesting card that might be good and is probably decent in most cases, but is a little expensive and hard to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think he's a little expensive, but his ability could be good, so it's hard to say right now. The monk and monk attachment thing is a little bit limited in the core set, so if FFG expands on that, in the Dynasty packs, then maybe his ability gets a little bit more universal and easier to use. But the only while attacking thing is what really limits that card. If he could just do it universally, it'd be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you want to run this card just because you have, in the core set, you don't have much of an option. You're going to run the monk package. You're going to run the monk attachments. You're going to run the other monks that trigger putting Fate on rings with like Katsuki Investigator. And you're probably going to end up running some Seekers of Enlightenment. And because you're running those, this guy combos with those very well, and so like for now I think that'll work. In the future we'll see dragon decks diversify up into monk decks that have the fate investment mechanic, and then you'll have the like duelist Niramoto decks that are going to be more attachment focused. So like right now it's kind of like a split thing, But this doesn't really work well with the attachment focus thing unless you give someone a monk attachment and they've already been used. So he's a little clunky, but I think he'll definitely have his niche in certain decks. So let's go on to the next 4-drop. Gentry, why don't you tell us about Ni-Ten Master?
So Ni-Ten Master is another 4-cost. He has 3 military, 3 political with 2 glory, the Bushi trait, which is always nice, and the reaction. After you attach a weapon attachment to this character, ready this character, limit twice per round. So, again, you guys have more experience with this than I do, but he seems reasonably strong, from what I can tell, solely because you can throw him out at any point in time and just throw him into like 2 or 3 conflicts in a turn pretty easily, especially in Dragon, where you're going to want to run a ton of attachments anyway, and a lot of them being 0 cost is pretty nice as well. You can pretty easily, for like 5 or 6 fate, have 3/3 in one conflict, and then buff him up to like a 5/3 in the next military conflict, and then have him go into the last like political conflict for another 3 to 5 buff for that as well. He seems like a card that's pretty good a couple of turns in when you already have a setup and you just need some extra stats to throw into every conflict.
This guy's really cool. So when I first saw it and we thought the weapon thing would be not super useful, I was skeptical about the card. Then I saw it played, and at 2 glory he could be just a 5/5 honored, which is pretty crazy. But the weapon thing is nuts because it means you can attack with him, and then it doesn't really matter what happens. Like, presumably you win, right? But then you could play a weapon attachment during the intervening conflict between conflicts and ready him, so now he's on defense, and now your opponent has to worry about a bigger character. And yeah, he's also a Bushi, so you could even play like a Sashimono on him, because that doesn't take a restricted slot. It is important to note that restricted attachments, you can only have 2 on a character at any given time, but because of the way the restricted rule works, so if you play another restricted attachment to him, you would just have to discard one, and then the new one attaches to him and would trigger his reaction, assuming it hadn't already been triggered.
Yep. I like this 4-drop a lot. The main limiter on him is actually the weapon keyword that the attachments need to have for him to ready. And Dragon have the Fine Katana, they have Ancestral Daisha, which was spoiled really early on, and then they'll have whatever attachments from their Splash faction. I think we actually have most of the neutral attachments pretty much spoiled at this point.
So yeah, I think we might have one left.
So I think like that's pretty much what they're going to have, and that's the limiter on this guy. But if you have one Ancestral Daisho, you presumably always have an Ancestral Daisho because it leaves play and it comes back. So that seems pretty solid. And again, the fact that you can just drop other restricted stuff to make a new restricted thing come into play means that this guy could theoretically do it turn after turn. Any ready effect is very good. So, and if your opponent bows this guy, you can just play an attachment and ready him during the conflict. Otherwise, like Dan said, you can just do it between conflicts, and then he can participate in multiple. And it's like pseudo Sashimono as a free reaction at the cost of slightly subpar stats, but 2 glory really makes up for that. So, getting him honored, he just becomes a monster of a card. I like it. You should probably play it, especially an attachment-focused Dragon.
Yeah, it's a really cool card. I was a little bit skeptical, but then I saw it played. I'm like, wow, this card's awesome, but not as awesome as our last character.
Yeah, why don't you tell us about the best Dragon card, best clan champion so far, probably, Togashi Yokuni.
Yes, so this is Togashi Yokuni. He's unique. He's a 5-cost character with 5 military and 5 political stats, 3 glory, the Bushi, Shuganja, and champion traits. With the action, choose a triggered ability printed on another character. This character gains that ability until the end of the phase, max 1 per round. That's relevant because you can't gain an extra trigger with that with Way of the Dragon, which we'll see. So he can only ever copy 1 ability. But anyway, Yokuni is amazing. He's easily the best champion we've seen, and he's pretty much always the best card on the board in most cases, because he's always a copy of whatever the best character is on the board, on top of having insane stats. So because he's balanced stats, he can participate in both conflicts without having to be honored, and then if he is honored, he's just a beat stick in whatever he's doing. Bushi trait relevant, Shuganja trait relevant. there's really nothing bad to say about this card, I think, other than so his art is a little compressed compared to what his full splash looks like. So I really hope they make a full bleed of him so you can see the whole thing, because the full picture of it looks a lot better than he looks on the card. That's my only complaint.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to complain about with the Okuni. He's actually the only champion I would consider playing turn 1 so far. Just because Dragon are fairly resilient to a lot of control effects. If you splash Lion, for example, and get ready for battle. And his ability it warps the game so much. There's so many characters with good abilities on them. You've got Doji Challenger, you've got Lion's Pride Brawler, you've got in Dragon alone, you've got Miyamoto Raisugo, you've got the Niten Master's ability, you've got the Enlightened Warrior's ability, which can give him a fate whenever you can give your clan champion a fate whenever your opponent takes something off of a ring. You can copy the Agasha Swordsmith and tutor attachments with him. It's ridiculous. And it gets more out of control the way at the Dragon, which we're gonna get to very soon. Yeah, he's a nuts character. So
he gets better
things.
the more spoilers we see too. So as we see more cards from other clans, just be like, oh, this is just another thing Yokuni can do. Oh, this is just another thing he can do. It's just like figuring out how to play around him is difficult. Dragon are a little bit susceptible to dishonor, so that's one way to handle him. But for the most part, because he's going to be a copy of the best character on the board with his own stats, it's going to be difficult to play to try and control him.
Yeah, he might be a character where I really think he probably should have had 2 glory, because in practice he seems very strong, and it just seems to make sense to me that the Dragon are not a very glorious clan. So I'm kind of disappointed he has 3 glory, and I hope not every champion has 3 glory, because I think for certain clans it doesn't make sense for other champions to be like super high up on glory, but maybe that's just something they decide to do in the core set. Yeah, it is a bit of a downside to have 3 glory here, just because if you are against the faction that can dishonor reliably and often, Dragon don't have a means other than the Fire Ring to honor characters particularly. He can copy a Togashi Initiate's ability, but then you have to spend a fate to do it, and that's less efficient. You much rather copy another person's ability. That said, him with Raisugu is pretty great, because then they can just be like the 2 murder brothers going into conflict with a shit ton of strength and just killing people left and right.
I mean, I think that it's just thematically really good, the ability at least, and there's no argument that it is the best ability in the game and will probably always be the best ability in the game, unless something says you can't copy it due to the fact that it is every ability.
Because he can copy the best triggered ability on the board, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, so he has the best triggered ability in the game, no matter what. It seems ridiculously strong. Like, again, I haven't gotten to play with it, but it is legitimately the best card right now. I can't see any other card that is better than this card right now. Especially with its stats and with his traits and his glory, like the card is dumb.
It's ridiculous.
Like,
he's this game's version of Splinter Twin. If you play Magic the Gathering and you know what Splinter Twin does, it's kind of basically this game's version of that. It's ridiculous. Nothing more to say. He's a good static character with a really amazing ability and good traits with both Bushi and Shuganja. And Shuganja is probably going to get better when we see more spells coming out of Phoenix and stuff. And Dragon Phoenix is not only a very flavorful alliance, but looks like it might actually be a very impactful one as well.
One more thing to say, actually. This art, as cool as it looks, doesn't invoke Dragon for me. That's just me, though.
He looks like Shredder.
It looks...
Yeah, he does look like Shredder.
He's straight up Shredder. He's just shirtless Shredder. Yeah. Yeah. It bothers... The mask itself is the only part that kind of bothers me. Everything else is fine.
I think it's probably okay with the mask and Mempo. It's really... I don't know. It's like the fact that he's on like a rooftop at night with like all this it feels very ninja, which doesn't feel very Dragon.
It doesn't... Yeah, exactly. It seems a little
strange.
Hey,
he looks like a straight badass, so I guess I'll take it.
This is true.
He looks like he's gonna fuck your day up. All right, let's go into the last dynasty card, which is the Dragon Holding. Secluded Temple is a holding that gives +1 strength to the province it is in, and it has no active ability outside of reaction. After the conflict phase begins, each opponent who controls more characters than you must choose a character he or she controls with 1 or more fate on it, Remove 1 fate from each chosen character, and it is a shrine traded holding. This thing is bonkers good. Real bonkers good. Your opponent either plays Fateless, which makes them very susceptible to things like the Water Ring or Miramoto Raisugu, or you're basically denying them 1 fate per turn on characters that they want to keep around, so they have to double up their fate on them if they want to play around this. It's not terribly difficult to meet the triggering condition, simply because you're Dragon, and you're probably not playing a lot of characters, in my experience. You're playing a couple, and it's really easy to play less than your opponent, and save your fate for attachments to make your characters more impactful than theirs, so it doesn't really matter that you have less. Yeah, it's great little holding. It's very, very unlikely I would ever discard this. Once it's there, I'd make my opponent go deal with it, because it's just simply obnoxious to deal with outside of that.
It's another annoying dragon card.
I think this is the first holding that we've seen that's actually worth playing 3 of, and that you actually want to see every game.
I'd say Artisan Academy.
Very
it's
strange.
Really close, but
Artisan Academy is pretty good, but like there's some points in time where you don't think too much about it, or you don't really want it. I think this card you want every time, no matter what. This is I think it's just too good.
I'm running 2 copies. I'm pretty happy with 2 copies of it, because I also run 3 copies of the Imperial Storehouse that we've seen. That seems to be to sacrifice the draw card, and that one I'm okay with running 3 of, just because I'm going to get rid of them every time I see them. At some point in the turn, I'll probably just get rid of them at the end of the turn if they're not threatened of being broken. But this is one that I think 2 of is great. You're going to see it more often than not with 2 times, and you only really want to see 1. With 3 times, I think you run the risk of sometimes flipping over multiple while keeping 1 around, and that really hurts you. So I like 2 times for this card. It's a very strong holding.
Yes. It's also the first one we've seen that impacts your opponent, because the other holdings more benefit you, the player who controls the holding. So that's Staging Ground, Artisan Academy, the Library, City of Lies. So this one directly impacts your opponent, which is interesting, because the other ones, like I said, the other ones don't do that.
This is true.
Yep. Yeah, it pigeonholes your opponent into either over-investing in characters or not investing in characters at all, both of which are very great for you. And if they're not investing in characters at all, chances are they're playing more characters, which means that this is just going to continue to be a problem until they deal with it. Yep. And with all the stand effects Dragon has, they should be able to defend this quite easily. I'm pretty happy with this holding. It's a good holding. You should run it. So let's move on to the conflict deck. Yeah, let's move on to the conflict deck. Gentry, you have our first conflict card. It's a character. Why don't you tell us about it?
So, yeah, I'm going to start off with our Tattooed Wanderer here. He has a 1 fate, 2 strength, and 1 political skill character in the conflict deck with 0 glory. He has the Monk and Tattooed traits, and states, you may play this character as an attachment with the text, attached character gains covert. Go ahead and describe covert for me, because although I kind of know what it is, I'm not sure I can describe it well.
So covert, while a character has covert and he is attacking, you may choose an opponent's character without covert, and that character may not be declared as a defender. So if you've played Game of Thrones, this is straight up stealth from Game of Thrones. It's really very useful, and in the case of L5R, where there's fewer characters on board, I'd say it's very useful here.
I do have one problem with it in Dragon, in the fact that, and this is what I've been looking at since we've been going through the cards, is that you typically don't want to have your opponent typically is going to have a lot more characters on the board than you, and it's possible that they may just end up with a bunch of characters on the board. This may or may not be as good as things come out. Because I think we've seen all of the factions that want big dudes on the board. Maybe not all of them, but I think there's a couple of factions coming out that are going to be more about smaller swarm, and it might not be as impactful there. But I think it is pretty good in general. It's going to be useful no matter what. And worst case scenario, it is still a 1 fate, 2 military strength that you can throw in the middle of a conflict. So it's okay there, at least.
That is the rub. I think, is that like if the covert's not useful, it's still a very solid conflict character at 2/1 for one. Also, worth mentioning, it's 2 influence for your splashing stuff, and this is probably one of the few dragon cards I think are very much worth splashing.
Yeah.
Secondarily, I like the aesthetics of a dragon picking up another dragon and just kind of wielding him like a weapon.
He's not wielding like a weapon.
He's
He's just a follower. He's just a monk.
That's not what this says though. It says that you gain them as an attachment. They are an attachment. They're attached.
Yeah, no, he's a follower.
And
he just follows you around and he tells you like
physically put on the other character.
He follows you around. He tells you how to be sneaky. What's not monkly about that?
I like to think that you either wield him like a weapon or he rides on your shoulders and like gives you advice as you're walking around, like whispers in your ear on your shoulder.
Yeah, he's like, you should use bushes for better cover to sneak past enemy lights. Being a tattooed wanderer, he's just very good at being covert.
Yeah. This card is insane on turn 1. Because 1 cost attachment that gives covert is on a turn where typically there aren't a lot of guys on the board, means that you're going to be able to do something crazy with it. And that's exactly what happened in one of the games I watched of yours, Travis. It just overwhelmed the opponent. I don't think there's anything necessarily bad about this card. It is important to know you don't get any of the stats bonuses when you attach this to a character. So it's not like you're giving +2 and 1, but you do give covert, and covert is really, really good. I think it's going to be good in this game. This is obviously the first card we've seen with it from FFG, so it'll be interesting to see what other characters have covert to counteract this. But just the existence of this card playing against, well, it's a splashable card, so you don't know. Buying 1 character on T1 and passing to your opponent can give them advantage because they can just covert your guy and do whatever they want with it. So that's something to think about with this character too.
This is true. We forgot to mention this. It is a 2 influence card. We need to get a little bit better about making sure we include that.
Yeah.
But yeah, secondarily, you can play this in other cards. And something that I didn't really think about initially, but this is actually probably really good for the mirror match as well. I feel like covert specifically is going to be ridiculous for Dragon Mirror because generally you just want to have 1 or 2 really big guys in Dragon. At least the way it looks now.
I like it more than an attachment that would cost 1 and just gives covert, simply because against like Scorpion, which we're pretty sure are going to have a lot of covert characters, you can just play it as a 2/1 and it becomes a very interesting way to help deal with covert in a sense as well. It just gives you more characters that the Scorpion are going to have trouble sneaking past. So, I like this card a lot. It's a very flexible 1-drop attachment. I'd probably run 3 of it in my deck for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Dan, why don't you tell us about the other monk attachment?
So this is the second Dragon conflict character. This is Tadashi Kazue. Am I pronouncing that moderately correctly?
I believe that is right.
3 fate, 3 military skill, 3 political skill, 1 glory, the monk and tattoo traits, and 2 influence. You may play this character as an attachment with the text, Action. During a conflict in which attached character is participating, choose another participating character. Move 1 fate from that character to the attached character. So this is a way you can leech fate from your opponent's characters to whoever this attachment is on. I think that effect is really strong. However, this is another 3-cost conflict character that I'm a little iffy about because 3 cost is pretty expensive. The flexibility of being able to play her as a character or as an attachment is good, but this is another card I haven't seen played. It's just mostly theory crafting at this point as to how effective this actually is.
So here's what I think about Kazue. I think Kazue is a very situationally niche, very powerful effect. The problem with Kazue is she doesn't give the action to the character itself. She gives the action to herself as the attachment, so it doesn't work with Way of the Dragon. And what ends up happening, I think, with Kazue against a competent opponent will be you play as a surprise once, and you steal 1 fate from a character with fate, and then the rest of the game she does nothing, because your opponent's not going to send fate into your Kazue attached character. That said, if we ever get something that moves attachments around, that would be real bonkers with Kazuya, because then they basically are forced again to just never fade on characters because you're just gonna take it anyways. Why bother? But right now, I think I can't help but see this as a 3-cost thing that takes a fate from an opponent's character, puts it on yours, and then is a blank attachment afterwards that you can use for attachment-based effects, which is a hard sell. She's a 1-of in my deck right now, just because it seems so situational. Her ability to just be a 3-cost 3/3 character is okay from a conflict deck. It's like on curve, but then she has no effect, so you can probably have better things to do with your 3 fate.
I mean, you say that it's just a blank card after that, but equally, again, we have to think about the fact that it does force your opponent to play around it. Like, yes, your opponent can very easily play around it. It's not hard at all, but it's still something that they do have to play around. So, like, you, as your opponent, as somebody playing against a Kazuya, I can't just never put any fate on any characters.
Oh, you
like,
can.
I can, but it's probably really bad. If I just never put any fate on any characters, it's probably really bad. And if your opponent has any fate on any characters, if you really want to, you can ensure that you get that fate, no matter what. You can always send the character with a sonnet into the conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like,
you can always hold back until they do. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you're not quite. Yeah, I don't think you're quite giving it the like praise it deserves. I don't know if it's amazing, but your opponent has to play around it no matter what, because you always have the option to use it if you'd like to. And it kind of works the same way as the holding does, where it forces them to either never play any fate on any characters or to overfate characters that they really need. And if it's a character that they really need, you probably want to send a character with this sonnet into that conflict anyway to help defend or attack against it. And equally, it also means that if they have a strong character that would be good in a conflict, you can put this on a strong character of yours, and they are forced to defend with their character with that fate on it, because it's a character that they need to be able to defend, and then you can leech off of it. Like, I think it's a little bit stronger than you think it is. Having not played it, of course, it might not be. It might be slightly worse, but I think it ends up being reasonably strong.
I think the
solely
real
because
caveat
you have to play around it.
The real caveat with this card is it costs 3. 3
yeah, that is definitely the biggest part, is that it costs 3, so it's really hard to use. But once it is on the board, I think it's actually very, very strong because of the forced reaction that your opponent has to do. Like,
yeah,
your opponent has no option, really. Like, if you're gonna steal a fate from them, you're gonna steal a fate from them, and you are technically refunding 2 of the fate in a way.
But what I'm saying with this card is your opponent just doesn't play fate on characters anymore. When this card's on the board, they just go full horizontal, and they don't put fate on characters until she's gone. So in a sense, this card probably steals you 1 fate, and then for the rest, until she's gone, your opponent's going to play full horizontal, which is pretty alright.
I mean, it would be
okay in some cases, but
I feel like that cripples them later on, because then they just lose board state every turn, and they have to reestablish board state every turn.
Yeah,
whereas you have consistent board state, and you have like at least 2 turns with this card, where you're going to be able to just roll over them however you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's strong. Again, it's just very situational to play her, because you have to have the 3 fate around when you have her in hand, and if you're holding the 3 fate, it could be read as a telegraph of her, and your opponent will play around it more.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I said, I think your opponent can play around it, and I think it's possible, but I still think this is a pretty freaking good card.
Yeah, I'm not saying she's bad. I never once said she's bad. I'm just saying she's expensive, and I'm not sure how good that is for stealing 1 fate, and then your opponent probably goes full horizontal afterwards.
Well, yeah, it's just sort of like, as a 3 fate investment, you're going to have to get a lot of value out of that over the course of the game, and compared to other conflict cards that you might have to play that do cost fate, so like we're about to see Ancestral Dice Show and Kitsugi's Method and Way of the Dragon, those all still cost fate too. So I mean, sometimes you go into a conflict and you can get 3 fate because of a ring effect or something, or like you've claimed a ring that had fate on it, but you needed that fate to play something else so that way you can win. So it just, playing a 3 fate conflict character is just difficult in my experience.
Yeah, she doesn't actually help you directly win the conflict she's in. That's probably the other rub with her. That said, paying 3 fate to take an opponent's fate and put a fate on your character could be very good. If that was just an event that did that, it might actually be playable, because theoretically you could take a fate off of their 5-cost clan champion and put it on yours, and that's a swing worthwhile of 3 fate, I think, because you deny them a turn of their best character and you gain a turn with yours, and that's a 2-turn swing with clan champions. So even though your net out fate, I think just the tempo swing of that over the course of a game matters a lot more. She's a very divisive card. I don't think I've seen her actually played, maybe once, but it's hard to say for sure how good she is. I like her as a one of, because I think in the situation where she'll be very good, you might just happen to have her.
Yeah. It gives me some ideas though. I want to play around with this card a lot, I think.
Yeah, if it gave the action to the character that it was attached to, I'd like it a lot more.
Well, yes, but I think it might actually be too good. It might actually be too good then.
It might be. Let's move on, because we've talked a lot about Kazue. This is mine, I do believe, or was it Dan's? I don't remember. Who are we on?
It is
I just did Kazue.
Okay,
so it is mine. Okay, sure.
Alright, so I get a very boring attachment, but also very nice for Dragon. Ancestral Dice Show. We saw this very early on in the spoilers. It is a 1-cost attachment that gives +2 military and 0 political. It is a weapon with the ancestral keyword, which is when this attached card leaves play, return it to your hand. When the attached card, not this attached card. And it is restricted, which also, as a reminder, means you cannot have more than 2 restricted attachments per character. It's a solid. It is 2 influence. Thank you. It's a solid card. Not much to say, really. It's a katana that costs 1, but it returns to your hand when the character leaves play, and only when the character leaves play. So, if someone makes you lose your attachment or something like that, it just doesn't return to your hand. So, it gives you. So the important thing I think about this, we're going to see this, and we're going to see another attachment with Ancestral. The important thing about Ancestral attachments, I think, is they give Dragon constant fodder to be able to commit attachments to character without necessarily needing to commit to the characters themselves. Simply because, you can have a character with 0 fate, and now you can put an attachment on him without necessarily worrying about getting extra value because the attachment's going to leave with the character. In this case, your attachment's going to return to your hand, and you can just play it again later. Whether or not this is worth the fate is something that's up for debate. I think it is. Just because it allows you to put pressure on his dragon and just, generally speaking, not commit fully to a character. And not putting all your eggs in one basket is a very good thing to have in a faction that kind of has a Voltron theme.
On top of that, this is really, really good for 9-10 Master.
Yeah, 9-10 Master.
So, but yeah, it just makes his effect more, able to go off pretty much all the time. Especially since you can replace this with another katana if you want to, and just get it back to your hand. You could actually just cycle these if you really need to.
No.
Is that not a thing?
No. The way Ancestral works is when that physical character leaves play,
I got you.
Any ancestral cards pop back to your hand. So think about it thematically. It's like your ancestors handed you items. So as one generation leaves, they pass their items to the next generation.
Yep.
Oh, I see.
If it did work that way, then
I misread the card. Yes, I misread the card. You're correct. Either way, though, it is still very good for Niten and just the clan in general. But it allows you to cycle through an entire hand of weapons for Niten if you need to.
Yep, you'll probably run a couple of these because you don't need to run 3. I think just because if you have 1, you're gonna pretty much always have it
forever.
Barring shenanigans.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, that's what's crazy about Ancestral is once you get 1, you pretty much have 1 the rest of the game unless they have some sort of disruption, which can be difficult to come by. So, yeah, this is just a good card. I mean, you're paying 1 more than you would pay for a fine katana, but you're paying for the Ancestral keyword, so that's fine.
Yeah, and equally you have Weaponsmith to take this out if you really needed to, so it becomes even more consistent.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's a solid card for your attachment-based dragon deck. Let's move on to the flip of this and just get through these because they're basically the same card but mirrored. Jen,
Are we
tell
doing-
us about
We're
Katsuki's
doing
method.
daimyo. Okay, we're skipping daimyo.
We're not doing Daimyo's favor. It's not an
Okay.
official spoil.
Okay. So Katsuki's method is a 1-cost attachment that gives 0 military and 2 political skill, and also has the ancestral trait and is also restricted. It is a technique and 2 influence. So yeah, like you said, it is exactly the opposite. It's just the same card, but for political skill instead of military skill. Everything that we just said applies, except
also
that it's
not a
technique,
weapon.
not a weapon. Yeah, except that it's a technique and not a weapon, so it can't be used with Ni-10. But
So yeah, I don't have anything to add about what this card can do. The same as the Daisho, other than in the art, the Kitsuki guy is investigating a murder and he's pointing at blood on the ground and be like, yes, this guy was murdered. Here, clearly you can see the blood. So I find the art funny, and also every time you play it on the guy, you're like, oh, my guy's Sherlock Holmes now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we use evidence now. What a novel concept. Evidence.
who would have thought?
Yeah. The Kitsuki are seen as strange because they actually look for evidence and try to figure out who actually did the murder, rather than the most convenient answer to who did the murder. I love the Dragon Clan and Rokugan justice in general. It's an interesting subject I recommend everyone look up a little more on in the fluff, because Rokugani's justice system is pretty fucked. So yeah, not much more to add here. Play it just like Ancestral Daisho. If you're leaning more military heavy, then you probably want more of these and less Daishos. If you're leaning more political heavy, you probably want more Daishos and less of these. But either way, the Ancestral keyword means you pretty much always have it, unless it gets discarded randomly or you replace it for some reason. Let's move on. Tell us about Way of the Dragon.
I got all the cool cards this time.
You did.
Right.
It's because we shifted one down. Alex
We
would've got
shifted,
him.
yeah. So, Way of the Dragon. This is a 2-cost attachment that gives +1 military skill and +1 political skill. It has the philosophy trait. Attached to a character you control. Limit 1 per character. You may trigger each attached character's triggered abilities an additional time each round, or specified period. So, this card works on 4 cards, I believe, natively in Dragon, and basically allows you to double up on things. The way it works on Yokuni is that's the interaction everyone was interested in the most. The way it works on Yokuni is he copies one ability, and then he can use that ability twice, assuming he has Way of the Dragon on him. So this card is... we were a little waffly on this card. It's like, how good is this going to be? This card, again, is also kind of game warping in certain situations. Being able to use a Ni-10 Adept twice in a certain conflict is crazy, because this also counts as an attachment that they could vow. Being able to trigger Yokuni's whatever ability he stole twice is pretty crazy. Being able to duel someone twice with Raitsugu is nuts, because then you could probably kill somebody, or kill 2 different people. So this card is really, really good, and probably... I don't want to say if it's the best Way of card, but it definitely seems more generally functional than Way of the Crane is just kind of vanilla and gives honor, and then Way of the Dragon, Way of the Lion, just is additionally vanilla and just kind of doubles something up. But this is a lot more nuanced.
I think it's very nuanced. I don't know if I'd call it generally better than Way of the Crane, because Way of the Crane is like almost always really good. Just honoring a character out of hand is fantastic. But let's see, the character assist is particularly effective on her. Definitely Yokuni, and the reason you can't do Yokuni's main ability twice is because then if your opponent had a Yokuni, you could infinitely loop and get all the abilities, and they decided, nah, that's not okay. You can do Yokuni. Ni-10 Master technically works with this. It allows you to do it 3 times per round, I do believe, rather than twice. It works with it does not work with the ascetic, because it's a philosophy and is not a monk or a tattoo. It works with Raitsugu quite well. It works with the Ni-10 Adept quite well. You can theoretically also use it with the Enlightened Warrior. If your opponent claims fate off of a ring twice, then they will get 2 fate. They will get it a second time, basically. So it's all right. It really shines on Yokuni though. I think that's like the person you want this on, and then to a lesser extent, the other two, Raisugu and Niten Adept. There's probably another character we're missing, but
no. It's surprisingly limited in Dragon in terms of the number of characters that you can attach it to. Because it doesn't work on the Kitsuki Investigator because it's already limit 1 per conflict anyway. I guess you could use his ability in the next conflict on the same character. That's how that would work, but yeah, most of the time you're going to want to put it on Yokuni or the Niten Adept or Raitsugu.
But I mean, those characters are like a fourth of your Dynasty deck already, so it's really good on those characters. You're probably going to have one of those characters around when you have Way of the Dragon. And so for that, I think Way of the Dragon's a really good card, and it's only going to get better as more Dragon characters are released with sweet boss actions.
Yeah, I mean, there's not anything else to say. The card is super good when it's useful, and it's useful more often than not, so it's fine.
Yep, and the fact that it gets +1/+1 makes the 2 cost a little bit easier to swallow.
Yeah.
Yep, so let's move on to events. The first event here, it is called Let Go. It is a 0-cost event with action, choose an attachment, discard it, with 2 influence here. This is a very
Let
good
It Go.
Yeah, not confused with Let It Go. Although you may want to break out into song every time. It's really funny because the art is just like someone smacking some guy's hand with a bow staff and making him drop his katana. So I feel like the theme is that you're supposed to let go, like the whole Buddhist thing of letting go of material attachments. But like in reality, it's just a monk smacking your hand and saying no, stop. So anyway, I really like this card. Almost every deck, like I said before, runs attachments, and most of those attachments are pretty good. Honored Blade, Fine Katana, Duelist Training, Above Question, the Ornate Fan, assuming it's just a mirror of Fine Katana as well. This is very easily just gonna ruin your opponent's day, and because you have characters that you have Niten Adept who cares about your opponent having attachments, this is a fantastic little event. I'm really tempted to say this should be a 3 times, but I personally had a hard time finding slots for 3 times of it, so I think if you can fit 3 of this in your deck, I think you should, just because every deck's going to have attachments.
The trade is so good on this card, too. So, like, say they play Sashimono on a character that's a 2 fate attachment, then you just play Let Go. You paid 0 fate, and they just lost 2. And that could be something that swings an entire turn in some cases. You can hit ancestral attachments with this, too. That's one way to discard them from play. Other times, just being able to discard an attachment and get that skill swing is important. This is a good card. This is a reason to Splash Dragon. Like, this and the Tattooed Wanderer are the 2 reasons to Splash Dragon in my mind.
And maybe
it's probably pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah, maybe some other cards that we don't know for sure yet are going to be reasons to Splash Dragon. Cough.
We won't talk about those.
Cough.
We'll act like that doesn't exist for now.
Yeah, but we're gonna act like it doesn't exist for now because we can't say for sure.
May not exist.
Yeah, but if it exists as it looks like it exists, it's a pretty nuts reason to Splash Dragon. The Let Go. Probably run as much of it as you can fit in your deck. It's gonna almost always be useful, and sometimes it'll just blow out your opponent. Don't play a big attachment against Dragon unless you have a way to not let them go. Yeah. Tell us about a really cool event.
Fire. Yeah, Mantra of Fire is real neat. It's a 0-cost event with the Kiho and Fire traits. I don't know if that's correct or not, but
Kiho's
we're going to go with it. Sick. And the reaction, after an opponent declares a Fire conflict, choose a Monk character or a character with a Monk attachment. Place 1 fate on that character and draw 1 card for 2 influence. So we were talking before about like all of these characters that are placing fate on rings and manipulating, how rings work. Kind of pushing your opponent towards certain rings so that you can get certain effects, and this is kind of what we were talking about. It's pretty easy. The Fire ring is already considered pretty good in every circumstance anyway. And, one of the more popular rings, just if you don't have anything particular in mind that you need to do, just because honoring a character is very good in general. And this is you can also just put fate on the fire ring to kind of push your opponent towards it so that you can get a free fate and draw card. It's pretty good in general, I think. There's no reason not to play it, especially if you're playing all of the cards that are placing fate on rings. It's pretty easy to force your opponent to either give you a bunch of free fate or give you some free fate. It's basically what this comes down to.
Yep. I win either way.
You're either getting free fate or you're getting free fate and a card, I guess.
For 2 influence and the fact that this only works on monk characters or characters with monk attachment, I don't think you're going to see this much else other than maybe Phoenix. Another neat thing about this card is it's not limited in any way. So if you have 3 of them, you can play 3 of them when your opponent declares a fire ring and draw 3 cards. Put 3 fate on as many characters. Distribute each one among your characters that are monks or have monk attachments. So this is a fun card. Also, if you draw one, so you can play one, and if you draw another one, you could also immediately play it because you're still within that triggering window of your opponent claiming a fire ring. And then theoretically, you could also draw your 3rd one and then play it again. It's fun. This card's great.
I love how this game, or L5R, seems to be doing conditional economy. So this is an example of that to me. Same way with for greater glory. So things that either you do or your opponent does that end up generating more fate value, or cards in this case as well. So one of the things we notice is that if Dragon plays a monk or a monk attachment, it almost means you cannot touch the fire ring on the off chance that they play Mantra of Fire. You'd have to evaluate that situation pretty carefully, because giving them that fate value and the card value is crazy. Just absolutely crazy. It's not going to be worth whatever card you're going to dishonor or honor in most cases, I think.
I think it really depends. If it's a 3 glory character, probably still worth it. But yeah, I think it definitely makes your opponent second guess whether or not they want to take that fate on the ring that you just put there when attacking them, and that's a good thing. And I think they still want to take it just to make you use your Mantra of Fire and not so you just get the fate for free. But yeah, I think Fire Ring is probably the most general use ring. It's almost always useful, at least in the games we've seen so far. So the fact that this triggers off Fire Ring means it's going to trigger quite a few times. Weakness of the card is your opponent has to do it, but that's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can force it pretty easy. Like they're gonna take it at some point, unless something very strange is going on.
Yep. Yeah. So it's Mantra of Fire. Nice little economy card. Let's go on to the next one, Dan.
This is also sort of an economy card in a way. This was actually the spoiler that the podcast got.
Yep, this is our spoiler. Woo! We released it early because we weren't
awesome.
casting for a week and a half when we got this. So,
yeah.
You're welcome, community.
Fingers crossed for crab spoilers, right?
Yeah,
so,
fingers crossed.
This is Indomitable Will. This is a 1-fate event with the reaction: after you win a conflict in which you control only a single participating character, that character does not bow as a result of the conflict's resolution, and this is 2 influence. So this is a good card because in Dragon, you're probably going to be playing a limited number of characters anyway, or you're Voltroning guys up or like buffing them up with attachments and things. So they're likely to win a conflict on their own, either attacking or defending. And preventing a guy from bowing during resolution is really valuable. I think we saw that in testing Sashimono, and actually in testing this card as well. This card's pretty good. It's because it's an event, it's not as flexible as the Sashimono in some cases, but better than in others because you can use it in political conflicts, and also, I guess Sashimono also works on defense. But yeah, this is a very good card, and Dragon are always going to be happy to have this. I don't know who could splash this card necessarily. Maybe Crab, if we see some more Crab stuff, if they play kind of more tall like that too, but I'm not sure. And yeah, this is just a cool card. Not bowing after resolution is good.
Military Crane.
Maybe.
Just saying.
Maybe.
I don't know if it's actually that good, but I have yet to have enough cards to put together a full deck and try it.
Yeah, the way I view this card is it's half the cost of a Sashimono to get a one-time Sashimono effect. So it's like Sashimono without being all in on having your Sashimono stick around and do that. And you can use it on political attacks and defenses as well. I think this card's really great on defense. It's like your opponent might be thinking, aha, I'm going to force him to defend this conflict because he can't afford to not defend it. And then you defend it with your one guy, your guy's really buff, you use your stronghold, whatever, he gets really strong, and you win the conflict, and then you play Indomitable Will, and your opponent is like really sad. And then
secondarily, secondarily, Miramuto's Prodigy is pretty good with this as well, if you're buffing her up.
Yep. Miramuto Prodigy makes this card very good, particularly if you have other tricks to either buff her up or make her win the 1v1 almost unconditionally, such as admit defeat.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to win the 1v1 with her as long as you your opponent doesn't have, conflict tricks that just make her not work, but this just keeps her around for other conflicts as well. So it's pretty viable to just have a buff Miramoto's Prodigy if you have an Indomitable Will in hand.
Yep. I dig it. It's a great card. I don't think it's maybe a 3 times because it's a little situational for my taste, but I think it's worthwhile to include in your deck. Just for the odd time you draw it and you can get it to work, it's going to be really nice stuff.
The only condition you really have to satisfy is winning the conflict, which sometimes can be difficult, or you overinvest to feel like you have to trigger Indomitable Will, but at least you'll get some value out of whatever character you use Indomitable Will on. So that's always good.
Yep. Yeah. So last card, I guess I got this one. This was the card from the live stream last Friday. Or not this most recent Friday, but the Friday before they released all the Dragon spoilers. This is Miramoto's Fury. It is a 1-cost event with action. During a conflict, choose an attacking character with glory X or lower. By that character, X is equal to the number of unrevealed provinces you control, and it is 2 influence. Another great card to splash if you are splashing Dragon. This card is just kind of, I don't want to say unconditionally good, because there's a condition where it's not that great, and that's if all 5 of your provinces are revealed, but otherwise this card's great. It's in the early game, this card just says you win a defensive challenge, and it combos really well with Indomitable Will, for example. It's just going to hit the majority of characters. After your opponent has attacked into 3 provinces, it no longer hits clan champions, and once they have attacked into 4, it no longer hits most mid-rangey type characters with 2 glory. But that's a fair ways into the game. For the first few turns of this game, this card is really good, and it's still useful even if you only have 1 unrevealed province. If you have 0, you can still battle a 0 glory guy, and there's a few of those that are rather relevant. So I think this card's just great. A 1 cost to battle just about anything is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said everything. There's no reason not to play it. It's a good bow effect. It's going to be useful most of the time. I can see, if we get more games that start going into, turn 5 or 6 or 7 pretty consistently, this card not being quite as good. Because by that point in time, you probably have most of your provinces revealed. But equally, too, if Dragon get more splashable provinces, get more provinces that are just good on reveal, or things like that, or we just get more neutral provinces that are really good on reveal at some point, then this card becomes a lot better because people will be disincentivized to reveal all of your provinces, which lets this card stay active for longer.
Yeah. What do you think, Dan?
So, I think I've said this a lot on this podcast, but bow effects are good. This is a bow effect. You should probably play this card.
Yeah.
Just being able to knock out stats with a 1 fate event is fine, in my opinion. It can hit a wide range of characters in the early game, so especially it's a really good defensive ability. You can only use it on defense, right? So it's just insanely good to help you solidify the early game and maybe help stabilize the board if you didn't get the exact draw you needed on that first dynasty pull. So yeah, this is definitely, you definitely want 2, maybe want 3, and then the thing about splashing Dragon cards is all the ones we've seen are 2 influence. So you have some tough choices to make between this, Indomitable Will, the 2 Kitsuki's Method and the Daisho, I think, are viable depending on what things you need. The Tattooed Wanderer and Let Go. So they have a lot of very splashable cards, but you're not going to be able to get all of them, so you're going to have to make some tough choices.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure how they stack up as a splash clan compared to Lion right now. At least in my opinion, it seems like Lion is the splash clan of choice for most decks just because of Ready for Battle. Sashimoto being very good if you are a balanced clan or a military-heavy clan. And you also have Honored Blade, which is just a nice little attachment.
So,
but Dragon look like
the
they're
thing is,
a
like,
good faction to splash, depending on what you want to do.
Who does Lion splash, though, is the question, right?
Yeah.
Because they get to splash everybody, but it's going to be... So, I was actually talking about this with somebody else, that Lion's Dynasty deck is okay. It's not fantastic. They have some good cards in there, but I think on average it's just fine. But their conflict cards are so splashable and good that they have a little bit of a benefit there, but it's just a matter of like who do they want to splash it with.
Yeah.
And that's a really tough choice because like so I can see the Crane cards that we've seen. Some of them are pretty useful. These Dragon cards are obviously really crazy. We've seen a Crab card now that they might like, or a couple Crab cards now that they might like. So there's some tough deck building choices when it comes to the conflict deck.
Yeah, I agree. Lion has a number of options. I'm really partial to the Crane ally because they have so many self-honoring characters, and Voice of Honor is such a great card. You also get duelist training, but I could see the Dragon ally as well for things like Let Go. Miyamoto Fury really helps them with their defensive plan because they don't really have a defensive plan other than to hopefully have more stats than the other guy, and you can also get some more attachments that buff your political as Lion, which is a weak spot. So like Dragon are kind of like a Swiss Army, nothing like super amazing, but like they've got a good little like toolbox here of things you can splash in depending on what you need. If you need a specific stat, then they've got the 2 attachments for it. If you need like just decent conflict characters, Wanderer is a really good one. Miyamoto's Fury is a great defensive event, and then you've also got Let Go if attachments are like really good in the meta. So like nothing really strikes me as like amazing must splash, but like they've got a toolbox of good options. If you just don't really like, if you feel like it's already pretty solid, you can just get a toolbox to shore up your weaknesses.
You're happy to splash any of those cards. The fact that they're available is nice, as opposed to having to like dig deep and pay 3 influence for something that you need. They're all
very
2.
much.
2 is such a weird number.
Yeah, that's true.
Influence.
I very much think that Dragon is kind of like the way that I've seen it, at least, is it probably seems better for more like offensive clans that have a lot of inherent strength that way, but need more in the way of defense. Like it is very toolboxy, but I think you have more in the way of defense in Dragon than you do, at least with splashable cards, than you do in the way of offense. So it's probably is more suited for things like Lion, or maybe when we get their Unicorn, if you plan on needing to defend at all, depending on how that goes. So
I think every clan has some pretty splashable stuff so far, so I'm really excited to see what the other clans have. This is our last revealed Dragon card. We know Daimyo's Favor exists from a card fan we saw early on, and that seems to be their last attachment. We know there's also an event that they're missing between Indomitable Will and Mantra of Fire. So it's either going to be a 0-cost event that is alphabetically after Mantra of Fire, or a 1-cost event that is before Indomitable Will. So that could literally be anything. And it could be a nice piece to the Dragon deck. But let's go on and say, how do you guys feel about Dragon overall? How do they compare to Lion and Crane? And what are you thinking when you're playing against Dragon? How do you deal when Dragon's across the table? So we're gonna answer these questions. Let's start off by just, how do Dragons stack up to the competition? Are they better, worse, good? What does the eggs and basket game plan work? Do you guys think?
I mean, I'm not confident in saying that they're better than the other 2 clans. They just seem more diverse, I guess. They have more options, I think, than the other 2 clans that have been revealed right now. Like, it seems like they're more balanced in respects of like they're able to defend and attack both pretty equally. Most of their cards are flexible in that they have effects that can be used for many different things, especially their clan champion, obviously, who can literally be any other card on the board so long as it's a triggered effect. I want to say they're maybe marginally stronger given perfect play. just because you have those options and just because you have, much more in the way of flexibility. But they definitely seem more difficult to play, and they definitely seem a lot of their cards seem very niche. Like you have to find the correct spot to play their cards in, as opposed to light and green cards, which generally seem more good. Like they seem just generally good in more situations.
So I feel like, Dragon is a strong clan, and I was actually a little bit worried when we kind of speculated they were going to be this kind of all-in Voltron strategy, because typically that doesn't work in a lot of card games, but it works really well here. In fact, it's given that the board wipes pretty much every turn. It's not as much of a concern, and especially because they have the ancestral trait, they can get some of that investment back, so you don't feel as bad about putting attachments on guys. Some of their cards are really annoying, like Knee-10 Adept is insane. Some of their Covert out of the Tattooed Wanderer is very, very good. They can build tall, but they can also go wide if they have to. Like if you on your last turn, if you just want to break Stronghold, you can just dump a bunch of guys on the board because they have some low-cost guys that are you can get value out of. Just in general, I was really surprised at how they stack up to both Crane and Lion. Everything seems pretty balanced right now. Obviously, we don't have the entire rule set, so things can change. But right now, I think all of the clans match up against each other pretty well. And when playing against Dragon, the thing that they seem to be susceptible against is Dishonor, because they do want to like to draw cards from that conflict deck. Susceptible to the Fire Ring and having some of their characters dishonored, like Yokuni, or susceptible to send home effects. So if you go all in on one guy and they just march your guy home, then all of a sudden you're kind of SOL when it comes to whatever conflict you're thinking about.
Yeah. I mirror a lot of that. I think the real strength of Dragon as a clan, and why I think they seem to be pretty strong right now, is because compared to Lion and Crane, they're easily the most balanced, and their stats across the board can get really high. And they tend to have a lot of resilience to keep their guys around. They have like a couple of ways to get fate on them when they otherwise wouldn't, and if you go for like ready for battle, then it's really difficult to keep a dragon guy knelt. So bow doesn't seem to work very well at all, and because they're attachment based, the Crane ability to stop events is less useful because they don't play that many events. They just play attachments instead. And they have a lot of character abilities. We don't see anything that counters character abilities right now. So like right now, the Dragon game plan is I have a ball of really diverse stats in both military and political, and my Stronghold boosts that diversity. And then I also am just really resilient to the current control effects we've seen outside of Send Home. They have basically nothing that deals with Send Home. So right now that seems to be the best thing. If we see a lot of kill effects, like discard a character from play effects, that could really hurt them as well. And that may influence their ally. They may have to ally with someone like Crane in order to get above question so that, their stuff doesn't die or sent home. So we'll see how it goes. But right now I've found a really nice home in the Lion ally just for ready for battle and a couple of other nice attachments to bring over like Ashimono. But I don't think that's going to stick around just because I think we're just missing some key answers to Dragon's playstyle right now, and that makes them seem really good.
Yeah, I mean that seems pretty fair. I think they're like we all said. I think they're just the balanced faction. I think they're better in they're slightly better at doing everything than anybody that's not specialized in that thing, and that just kind of makes them easier to play with from a standpoint of, should you play correctly, they'll probably win in most circumstances, except for the specific circumstance that the opposing deck is built against. I think they're just particularly good given what we've had revealed as well right now, just because there's a lack of control effects that deal with them. But I feel like that'll probably change as more cards come out. I feel like they'll probably be a little more susceptible to what's coming out later, for sure, because otherwise they might end up just being the best faction. Like if there aren't too many control effects that aren't like second homes or just kill effects or something like that, they might just be better than everything else.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Brad has said a couple of times, or maybe it wasn't Brad, but someone at FFG has mentioned that each clan kind of has their own flavor of control, in a sense. Dragon have Miyamoto's Fury, which is a bow effect. Crane obviously have a ton of bow effects. Lion have some send home effects, and Lion's Pride Bower as a bow effect. Up until this point, bow seemed way better, just because it basically denies the character for the turn than Send Home. Send Home denies them from the conflict, but they can still do other stuff later in the turn to kind of make up for it, whereas Bow removes their stats entirely from the conflict. Lion being so resilient to Bow makes me think that they definitely seem to have a weakness to Send Home, and will definitely have a weakness to discard effects like Noble Sacrifice. We've seen in a couple games. Noble Sacrifice did some real work against Dragon, just because they don't have a way to deal with that right now. So I think that's the thing right now, is there's just not enough of those effects. And I think certain clans, I think Scorpion's going to obviously specialize in discard, and Unicorn will probably have some movement type stuff. So we'll see how that goes. And, Phoenix also looks like it might be a pretty hefty control faction. Maybe they have good ways to deal with Dragon. But I think overall, the Voltron thing works. It works quite well. Almost scarily well. You wouldn't have expected your guy with 5 attachments to be there the entire game and do stuff consistently every turn, but I found that to happen more often than not. So I think Dragon are a really good contender for one of the better clans we've seen so far. Hard to say, though. Still got 4 to go.
So much of the game, though, like in playing it, comes down to how you manage your fate and what conflicts you go into. So like any clan can win in any like situation. It's not like we're saying Dragon is definitively better than anybody almost all the time, and just because you play Dragon you're gonna win, or just because you play Crane, etc. There's so much of this game comes down to play and like small decisions that you make, which is really cool. It's cool that the game focuses more on your little decisions over what's in your deck and just playing, good cards. Obviously, you need to play good cards too, but in gameplay decisions, I like those more.
Yep, I think the game is still largely based upon your decisions you make and how good those decisions were. And there's tons of tiny little decisions, and over time, those tiny little things that give you incremental advantages add up to a big advantage if your opponent is not also making the same correct decisions that you are. So I still think the game's relatively skill-based. Dragon just seemed to be well-balanced, and well-balanced seems pretty good. They're good at a lot of things, namely just putting big things on the board and keeping them around. Flexibility is good. So first off, guys, I want to say thanks to getting this in just over 2 hours, I think, on my recording right now. We were pretty much done with the actual card review in under 2 hours, so hey, we're not releasing a monster episode this time. Thanks you guys for joining me again. It's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely, and I love doing this every couple of weeks. It's really good to get some insight from everybody on how the cards work, and to get my own insight out there. And I find that having a few different people with a few different mindsets on how things work kind of helps the game grow in a competitive sense as well. And obviously we don't have all the cards out yet, but it's good to at least get a head start on it and have some kind of vague idea going into it when it finally does come out. At least kind of how the game should shape up.
Yeah, and we're gonna definitely get you some games. That's the goal, is to get you some games before the
I'm
next
definitely
cast.
gonna be playing some games. Before the next podcast comes up, I'm going to have played plenty of everything that's out for sure. So rest assured, I'll have a little more knowledge base going in next time.
All right, it's good to know. So once more, thank you guys for listening to the Winter Court Podcast. This is our Dragon Clan episode, and I am once more Travis McDaniel, known as Travis Fights Dragons on the Discord, Reddit, and the forums. You can find me in any of those, and if you have any questions, you can also send us an email or message me directly. Our email is wintercourtpodcast@gmail.com.
I am Alex Gentry, also known as Dark Destroy on both the Discord and when I get there, the Reddit. I'm there occasionally.
And then I'm Dan Henley, known as Danwar on Reddit and Discord and on the internet generally. And if you need to reach out to anybody on this podcast, or you need to reach out to mods on the L5R subreddit or on the Discord, we're on there pretty much all the time. So,
yep, he's the mod of choice. If you have anything, like if you have an issue with the Discord or the subreddit, Dan's your guy. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you listeners for listening again. And until next time, play some Dragon Clan games, and the table is yours.